Hello, viewers of our Stop the Destruction of the World program. We are here once again to study the psychosocial causes related to the destruction of our planet and to understand how we can conscientize and control this illness that emanates from the individual and spreads to society. How can this perception help us stop the rampant destruction that we are living in? This destruction isn't only at the ecological level with these terrible catastrophes that we are witnessing. The destruction can also be seen at the social organizational level, in the hunger, the injustice, terrorism, physical diseases and epidemics. It seems that human society hasn't really worked, right, Dr. Kepi? Dr. Kepi is the founder of the Society of Integral Psychoanalysis. He's made a comparison between the diseases that occur inside us, which are more unconscious, and those that occur in our society, which are threatening our very survival. If we don't look into this, we won't be able to treat the human mind, and there will be no possibility whatsoever of bettering the socioeconomic and environmental situation.
That's why our program is called Stop the Destruction of the World, because humanity no longer has the important equilibrium it needs. Humanity is generating bad energy, and this energy, as the saying goes, it can even dry up a pepper plant. It sucks the plants and waters dry. The evil human being, who is envious and arrogant, even attacks nature. In ancient Greece, they said that virtue lies in the middle, virtus et medio. Let me give you an example of this. This pen, for example, has a certain equilibrium. We can equate this to humanity. And if it loses its balance to one extreme or the other, you see, this is a sign that the balance was broken and the world is in danger. So if the human being, for example, eats too much, he jeopardizes himself. Or if he talks too much, or is overly aggressive, or to the contrary, the other extreme, if he eats too little, if he attacks himself too much, he also becomes imbalanced. So neurosis can be classified as an excessive or deficient attitude. Either the individual is excessive in one field or he's deficient in another and isn't maintaining a necessary equilibrium. Let's take a look at the signs of neurosis that I've put on this diagram.
Signs of neurosis and psychosis. First, the person can't tolerate any type of frustration.
If parents raise their children by pampering them too much, catering to their every whim, then of course, their children will grow up in a delirious way. They'll think that in the world they can have anything they want. Children have to have limits. We aren't the only ones who have said this. Even Freud spoke about putting limits on children. In second place, signs of neurosis.
Neurotic individuals dream up delirious ideals.
For example, a person wants to think anything he wants. The human being can only think about what is real. For example, if he thinks of something unreal, the mere fact of thinking this takes him out of reality. He begins to increasingly live in a delirium and will begin to become ill. What a person has to do is see if what he is thinking is really in accordance with what is actually taking place. He has to make this relationship. If he doesn't, he will jeopardize himself. In third place,
he has a hateful and vengeful conduct.
This is obvious. Do you know what hate produces? It's the great illness of our century. Cancer, tumors. You can verify that 1 out of every 5 people have cancer. It's the illness of hate. They try to solve it with chemotherapy, etc., but it doesn't work. If a person doesn't do psychotherapy to calm himself down, the minute he stops the chemotherapy, the cancer returns, or some other illness appears. Or as in revenge. The source of illness stems from within the person.
Many times, this person identifies with the idea of feeling hurt, and this idea of feeling hurt is implied in the issue of revenge. It's repressed rage. And any person who feels he has deeply held, hurt feelings inside is in danger because this is a radioactive bomb inside which creates many disturbances in the cells.
Let's look at an example that occurs every day in psychotherapy, because the media encourages us to be millionaires, to be rich. Many people come to think that the source of happiness is in exterior wealth. But even if a person is well off, he can be unsatisfied and envious of the individual who has more than he does. Now look, consider well what I'm about to say. If a person isn't happy with what he has, there's a problem of envy there, because he has exactly what he's made for himself. No one can say that he's a victim of wealth or of poverty. He's in that situation because he put himself there. And if he doesn't accept what he has, it's because he's very envious. Let's see, in fourth place.
He doesn't think things out well.
There are certain people who can't think very well. They can't link one thing with another. That is, they aren't able to explain things. Either they talk too much or too little. This is a sign of illness. In fifth place.
Excessive interest in what is mundane.
What is mundane is the mask. There's the individual who loves to appear in the newspapers. He loves being flattered, being out in society. Or those who suffer because they can't get out where they can be seen. These people become ill because they live something that doesn't exist. What merit can an individual gain from bestowing glory upon himself, when the only glory is the link he has with the divine being? Sixth place.
Excessive interest in money.
This issue is obvious. The individual who is very taken by money is one who places money above his own life, when money is actually something that is inferior to him. And after this,
the mania to consume.
this is evident in itself. The society based on consumption is really absurd, because it is consuming nature, the world, in exchange for what? If a person has 2 cars, why does he need 4 or 5? If a person has 2 or 3 pairs of shoes, why does he need 300? You open the closet and there are 50 suits, 200 pairs of shoes, things like that. Why? This is called satisfying one's envy. Eighth place.
A person who is voracious with food and drink.
And continuing.
And excessive office politics and lies. These are people who like to gossip and chat on the phone.
All you need to do to identify whether a person is sick or not is to see if this person gossips about others behind their backs. And what is malicious gossip, intrigue? It's saying something unreal about someone, or not seeing something real in another. Delirium isn't only about telling lies, it's also about not seeing the truth. Humanity has 6 billion people who do this. There are very few who escape this. So take a look at what happens in this diagram, Claudia.
Yes, there's what's happening here in this slide. There's a man with a small axe going after another man on the ladder. This is an illustration of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, written by the English writer Stevenson.
It shows here that out front there is a reasonable individual, and behind is a monster who wants to strike him with an axe. And neurosis is this. It's the individual who wants to destroy himself and others. I'm going to talk about a great writer and an extraordinary woman.
Melanie Klein.
She saw that the Freudian theories were very chauvinistic, that is, very much in favor of what is masculine. She said that Freud wasn't correct regarding his focus on sex, and saw that the issue of envy or intrigue was much more important. She shifted away from the sensorial level down here to a superior level, the level of feelings, the psychological level. She was very influential in England, where she developed her work, which also reached Brazil, showing that envy is the basis of illness. This work wasn't accepted as much in the United States, where they remained more focused on sensorial elements. Now, I would like to talk briefly about structuralism. Take a look at this writer.
Walter Benjamin.
Take a look at what he said.
A general decadence exists in humanity.
This is obvious. Secondly,
For example, the quality of art has fallen because it has been replaced by films and television.
thirdly,
Benjamin considered the decadence was in the exterior and not inside human beings.
this is where he went wrong. This structuralist orientation began in Austria and Switzerland. Walter Benjamin did most of his work in Vienna. This was a school that placed grammar above the language. In our language schools, grammar is placed subordinate to the language. Those who create a language are the people. Grammar's sole use is to give language a kind of coordination. Portuguese, like many Latin languages that rigidly follow grammatical rules, has become outdated over time. German, for example, takes nouns and transforms them into adjectives and then into adverbs, into everything. In Portuguese, Latin languages, the same should happen. This is called neologism, where the grammar must follow the people. Schools today that give emphasis to grammar cut understanding. They cut thought and the study of languages. We'll be right back.
A key inversion in science.
Always we are trying to extract energy from a material element.
And its negative consequences.
We provoke serious imbalances in nature.
Corrected now with the Kepi motor's disinversion of physics.
And we developed a way to have mechanical power with very little electricity.
This will make a big change not only in energetic efficiency, but also it will bring better energy in homes because it's magnetic energy.
The Kepi motor. New technology for a new world.
Há 20 anos, eu e a doutora Heloísa Coelho aplicamos a trilogia analítica na odontologia e nós escrevemos esse livro, Odontologia do Terceiro Milênio Trilógica, onde nós damos assim uma melhor orientação no tratamento mais conservador dos dentes naturais. Então eu vou citar para vocês o exemplo da prótese fixa. Como nós podemos ver aqui no esquema, a ausência de um dente e são desgastados 2 dentes íntegros para a colocação de um terceiro elemento. Só que no futuro começa a dar cárie nesse dente, então a pessoa tinha perda de um dente, aí ela fica com perda de 3. Isso não é uma maneira assim muito natural da gente repor um dente ausente. O importante seria ter assim uns métodos mais conservadores, como nós orientamos. E a odontologia segue muito uma ideia até humânica de que o artificial é melhor do que o natural. Então acha que o que o homem faz é melhor do que o que Deus criou, né? Então muitas vezes são tirados dentes que estão bons para serem colocados implantes no lugar. E isso não é uma orientação correta.
Picking up where Marcia left off, Dr. Kepi, let's talk more about this artificiality that medicine and pharmacology have adopted. In 1977, you discussed iatrogenic illnesses on TV. There was a study conducted by Professor Lacasse at the Hospital of the Clinics, and he and his team reached the conclusion that 33%, or one-third of all illnesses, had iatrogenic causes. In other words, they were caused by doctors, medication, and hospitals. In those days, there was a great controversy about this. Nowadays, this is official data. At least one-third of deaths and the third leading cause of human death is because of doctors, medicines, and hospitals. Official health organization statistics have already publicly declared that at least 85% of all illnesses are of an emotional nature. When you start talking about this, you worked in the psychosomatic medicine department at Hospital das Clínicas, and the issue was very provocative, something like an insect with 7 heads. You used to say that illness stems from the emotions. If the human being doesn't treat his interior life, he won't get better. All the medication he takes will have negative side effects. But not only this, it also helps keep the person unconscientized. What emerges is a fight between, on one hand, an increase of consciousness regarding the subject, and on the other, increased advertising from drug companies for Prozac and antidepressives to mask the problem.
And what this shows us, Claudia, is that economics is put above science. The question is profit, and the pharmaceutical industry has the greatest profits in the world because the people now are addicted to taking medicine. Almost no one lives without his personal drugstore at home. Rooms full of pills and shelves stocked with medications. Do you remember when we arrived in New York in 1984 to live there? After 6 months, we started doing a television program. Even the doctors there said that 6 months later, the medical orientation in New York had entirely changed. We had our clinic on East 96th Street, where we worked every day. And the doctors there accepted our orientation. But unfortunately, later, the economic power began to force Prozac into the market and other medications that they thought were marvelous. And medicine went back to being only physical, which, as we know, is even dangerous. As Marcia mentioned, the same thing happens in dentistry. Dentists today think they have to change the dental structure of a person. If the individual has wisdom teeth squeezing in, they must be extracted, worn down. That is, they try to redo the Creator's work as if he had made a mistake. So, what does this show? The human being thinks he can live a mask. I made a diagram to clarify this. Let's take a look.
Eu fiz esquema para elucidar isso. Veja aí.
The human being's essence is this blue part in the center. His essence is reality and goodness. Up there is aesthetics, and what is beautiful, real, and truthful. And by rejecting all this, due to envy, he created a mask around this blue part. Due to envy, lies, hate, revenge, aversion, unreality. And around this is the unreal, in which the human beings now live, the opposition to real life. I wrote a book called Earth, Planet of Illusions. The cover features that famous Norwegian artist's painting of a man in desperation, with everything happening here around him. It shows the despair that human beings live in. Because the human being created a different life from what is natural. The mental structure of the ancient Greeks created a philosophy of life that had the human being living in accordance with nature, in accordance with the natural laws. So true science, the important experimental part, should be about discovering the natural laws of life and not go out creating new laws, especially laws that are artificial or unnatural. So what happens in physics? Let's take a look.
The inversion in physics. Number 1. Albert Einstein believed in this E equals mc squared formula.
The m is matter, shows energy coming from matter. At the speed of light is the c squared, which is something rather incomprehensible, as if energy comes from matter. If it were like this, the sun, the moon, the planets wouldn't last 1 year, because they would suck up all the matter, and that would be the end of the energy. It's matter that stems from energy. Or better, matter is energy. So when a person despises matter, he is despising energy. He is discarding the divine being that created both. This has been discussed a lot in Judeo-Christian thought, that matter should be secondary. But it's not like that. We are here today in body, but we will very soon be dead. No one likes to discuss this, but later we will all resurrect with our bodies. For example, a fat person like Alex, who is here holding the camera, will return as totally elegant in eternity. Or an ugly person will come back beautiful. Well, that's if he comes back in goodness, of course. So, this is what happened. We disdained matter, and therefore the body, as if it were inadequate. So, here's another inversion in physics of Arnav Bohm.
They say that energy's origin lies in quantum potentials rather than seeing that what they call potentials are actually the fundamental energy.
Modern physics was introduced by Aristotle, not by Einstein or Bohr, Rutherford. It wasn't created by physicists. The origin of physics involves a long link that dates back to Greece. Greece already had physics, and so what's been followed has not been the physics before Aristotle. What's been followed is only Aristotelian physics. And what did he say? That a small potential exists, which later becomes greater. Like the idea that the individual is born with little knowledge, with an inferior structure, and slowly gets better, rising and rising, rising.
O indivíduo nasce completo.
This isn't so.
O que
The
acontece
individual
é que
is
ele
born
mudou
complete.
posição na
What happens
intuição,
is that he
na
begins to
ciência
oppose
que ele
intuition,
tem.
impose
Ele
the infused
vai
science
opondo
that he has
à
within,
natureza.
puts
E aí
himself
ele
in
vai
opposition to nature,
destruindo
and then he begins
a,
to
vamos dizer, a
destroy the
própria
perfect
estrutura
structure he was
perfeita que
given.
ele tem.
And so,
Então,
let's
veja
look
a
at
teoria
Kaluza-Klein's
Kaluza-Klein.
theory.
Electromagnetism would arise from virtual fields in particles. What's the consequence of this inversion? The creation of cyclotrons, energy that stems from matter.
Então, veja,
Look at how this idea is contrary to the way it really is.
Agora, rapidamente,
Now,
eu
I
queria
would
mostrar
quickly
aí
like to show
como
something about the famous
acontecia
Nikola
com
Tesla.
esse famoso Tesla, né?
Look at
Veja
this
essa
photo.
foto do Tesla. É uma foto
It's
lá
Tesla
no-
in his
no
laboratory.
laboratório dele. Ele
He is
sentado
quietly sitting reading a book,
lá,
and the
lendo o
electromagnetic
livro, e a
energy is
energia
jumping from one
eletromagnética
pole to the
pulando
other.
de um polo para o outro, é.
He wanted to show us that we live within enormous energy fields,
Assim,
but we
dentro
don't
desse
perceive that it's
campo
energy
que
that
é
makes our
enorme,
lives.
e sem perceber que
This
é
is why,
energia
with a
que
more
faz a
dynamic
nossa vida.
individual,
É
the
por
more
isso
active
que o
he is,
indivíduo
the
tem mais
healthier
dinamismo,
and longer
o indivíduo
his
que
life
tem mais
is.
ação, ele tem mais saúde e vive mais tempo.
The individual
O
who
indivíduo
stops
que para,
becomes
ele
ill
começa a
and
ter
practically
doença,
begins
ele
to die.
começa
So
a
no one should
envelhecer
retire.
praticamente. Na
Those who
aposentadoria,
do
né? Ninguém
die
pode se
very quickly.
aposentar. A pessoa que se aposenta, ela
So,
pouco
we have
tempo
reached
ela
the end
perece.
of the program, haven't we,
Então,
Claudia?
estamos no fim, né, Cláudia?
Yes, exactly. We will be back next week at the same time to continue with our conscientization campaign about the psychosocial causes related to the destruction of the world. Thank you. See you next week.
Semana.